Hi there again, this is DM Nell, and this is another edition of Sotdl Talk. And in today's video, what I'm going to do is kind of go over how I have set up Shadow of the Demon Lord in my Roll20 account so that I can run games and run campaigns effectively. And what this is not going to be is a Roll20 tutorial. There are plenty of other videos that are available on YouTube that will show you how to do basic stuff in Roll20. So I would recommend that if you are interested in running games in Roll20 and you haven't done so, or any type of video tabletop or virtual tabletop, then do your homework before you try. There are various tabletops out there, and my choice is Roll20 for various reasons. So today I'm going to go through how I set up my Roll20 campaign for Shadow of the Demon Lord, and it's actually a work in progress. I have already run a Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign, and I didn't have this specific one set up. I actually had a different one set up, which is this one down here. And I decided that I didn't want to use that as my ongoing Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign, so I set up a new one. And that one is this one, which I entitled Shadow of the Demon Lord Adventures. And so I'm kind of building this from the bottom up. Whereas the last one, I kind of started. I basically ran it the campaign Tales of the Demon Lord on the other one I just showed you, and I kind of built it as I went. So it's kind of cobbled together, and it's not really set up the way I would like it to be set up for future campaigns. So I went ahead and just started a new one here, and this one is being built with the purpose in mind of being able to create a new game or add a new game or start a new campaign and have all the tools that I need already established so that I don't have to constantly add things to it. So I went ahead and started the campaign in Roll20, and the settings that I have for it is, first of all, it's not a public game. It is a closed game. I have a group of players that I invite to my campaigns. They're my friends, and we've been gaming together for 30 years. And I'm pretty comfortable with just running games for them. But on occasion, I might run a game for some other folks. And if I do that, then I will send out specific invitations for those folks. I never want to really just open up my game publicly for anybody to request to join, because I really want to keep control of who joins my game. So anyway, it's a private game. I don't have a background set. You can choose backgrounds, but I'm not going to go into that. Allow players to import their own characters. I have set to no at this point. If somebody wanted to import a character, I'd have to consider that, and maybe I would change that. But at this point, it's set to no. And then I have default game default settings. Now for this, there are some settings that you can have here that will facilitate faster page setups, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. I really haven't fiddled with this too much yet, so I'm going to do a little bit right now. So you can see the page defaults. If you open up a new page, it is set to default at 25 units by 25 units, and a unit is basically one square. You can set the square to represent any number of different types of measurements. So you have squares, or you can set it as feet, or you can set it as meters, or kilometers, or miles, or inches, or centimeters, or whatever that is, or hexes, or squares. And I have it set to one square. It's just easier for me to keep it at one square because I know one square equals 1 yard in Shadow of the Demon Lord. So if I just leave it at that, then it's easier for me in my poor little brain. You can also set the page background color. I have it set right now at this kind of orangish color, which kind of helps to emulate the color of a typical battle mat that you might purchase at a store, like the Chessex ones. That's kind of a harsh color, though, so I think I'm going to tone it down a bit and go with that one. It's still kind of bright. Let's go with that one. There we go. All right. And then the grid. You can set the grid to represent a number of units or just one unit, as I have it here. You can also set it so that it is the rules for it for measurement are the same as 4E, D&D 4E, which means that diagonals are counted the same distance as vertical and horizontal. Or you can do it as Pathfinder, where vertical and horizontal is a 1-for-1 measurement, whereas diagonal is, I believe, a 1 to 1.5, if I remember correctly. So the first square, it represents 1 square, and then the second square would represent 1.5 squares. So that represents the fact that going diagonally on a square is actually a further distance than it is going vertically or horizontally. That's way too much for my brain to handle, so I just leave it at the 4E compatible default. Don't know what Euclidean and Manhattan is. I haven't played with those, so I'm not going to discuss those at this point. Okay, so I leave it at squares. You can set it at hexes if that's your jam. And then the line colors you can set to be, whatever color you want. I have it set at light gray. You can set it at black if you want the grid to be darker, or you can set it at white if you have a dark grid and you want white lines to show through, or you can set it at any of these colors that are listed here. Now, there's also the opacity. If you want the lines to be darker or lighter, you can set this sliding bar. To the right means darker, to the left means lighter. All right, and the rest of this stuff is really specific to the different features that are available in Roll20, which again, I'm not going to go into detail on. But if you want the Fog of War automatically enabled whenever you pull up a sheet, then you can just click it here and it will automatically be enabled. The Advanced Fog of War, which is something that just recently came out, dynamic lighting, you can set it so that automatically is set up when you create a new page. But I'm not doing any of that right now. Because I like to set that on a page-by-page basis. Token defaults. If you want to have, whenever you set a token out, already have information populated, you can put that here. And then auras. If you want your tokens to have a specific aura visible, then you can set those here, and then every time you pull out a token, it'll automatically have that aura. Again, I like to set my token up specifically on a case-by-case basis for that token, so I'm not going to set any defaults here. Player permissions, I am going to set the default to RO1 and 2 because I always want the players to be able to see RO1 and 2, but I am going to edit or take the edit out because I don't want them messing with the permissions. And I don't want to set the name or the bar 1, 2, and 3 for them to see because, again, that's a case-by-case thing. Emits light. This is if a token actually emits light, and it only really comes into play if you have the dynamic lighting feature set up. But I sometimes do, I sometimes do. It didn't hurt anything if you set the defaults here, so I'm going to go ahead and set the has sight. I'm going to check that, and then I'm going to set it so that creatures that do emit light do it at a default of 20 yards for bright light, and then for shadowy areas, it would be 30 yards from the token, or 30 squares. Okay, so those are the token and the page defaults. I'm going to save those. And then you can also see, going back to the game defaults, that you have at the bottom here, character sheets. And there's a compendium feature here that you can allow access to in game. I wish there was a Shadow of the Demon Lord compendium, but there's not currently. There's a D&D 5e, Dungeon World, and Pathfinder currently. So I'm just going to leave that alone. The character sheet template, very important. If you want a character sheet in your campaign, I highly recommend using the Shadow of the Demon Lord character sheet. It is an excellent resource. And I can't speak highly enough of these authors. These guys rocked this character sheet. Just use it. Trust me. It's an excellent resource. All right, then you have default sheet settings. And you can set it so that new sheets default to the NPC setting. I don't have anything checked here, and I'm not going to check anything at this point because I like to, set up the character sheets on a sheet by sheet basis. So those are my defaults. And having set all the defaults that I want to set, now I go back to my actual campaign. And the rest of the stuff is, looking for players. If you're looking for players, you can click that, or content. If you want to archive your chat or you want to export your journal, you can do that. Not going to mess with any of that. However, you can set a few other things here on the cover sheet, and that is the type of game you're playing. This has a drop down, and unfortunately, Shadow the Demon Lord is not listed. As you can see, it has Shadowrun, but no Shadow the Demon Lord. This is a big gripe that I have with Roll20. I'm not exactly sure why Shadow the Demon Lord isn't listed. According to the forums, it's because there's not enough players on Roll20 playing Shadow the Demon Lord. And I suppose that may be true, but I find it hard to believe that there are more players playing Labyrinth Lord, which I've never heard of, or Maid RPG. I've never heard of that. Are there really more players doing Chroniques Oubliées on Roll20 than Shadow the Demon Lord? I don't think so. So I think that's kind of a BS explanation. But anyway, Shadow the Demon Lord is not here, so you'd have to use other games. And then you can click the date that you have a game session planned for. And I don't at this point, so I'm just going to leave this blank. All right, game add-ons. This is a cool little feature. There are some free templates that you can add to the game, and then there's some templates that you can buy. The Roll20 Pro Map Pack comes with the, I think it comes with the Pro tier subscription. And when you have that added to your game, then it gives you some free maps that are just kind of like your basic on the road map. You have your basic wilderness map. You have your basic tavern map, and so on. So it's really easy just to throw that out there if you have just a really quick encounter on the road or whatnot. So game add-ons are a really cool feature, but you usually have to purchase. I think it comes with some freebies, but you have to purchase some to get the cool stuff. Like I showed you here, Volo's Guide has the maps for that. I purchased Heroic Party, and yeah. So anyway, and you can see that what I've added to my Shadow the Demon Lord campaign is the Roll20 Pro Map Pack, and you can remove it if you don't want to keep it on there because it does take up space. All right, and then you can have your group chat, or you can have a group forum set up. So if you want a campaign forum, for example, you can set up a topic here, and you can just have your group, post to that forum. And in between games, you can talk about what happened in the previous game, what's going to happen in the next game, in between sessions, what your character's doing in the downtime and all that stuff. Okay, so for a video where I'm not going to talk about Roll20 features, I'm talking about a lot of Roll20 features. So let's get back into my campaign. At this point, I have my basics set up, so I'm going into launching my game, and that'll show you my virtual tabletop. And voila, it's loading. Okay, so here's my virtual tabletop, and it comes up with just a blank sheet. And this is just a grid, a typical grid, and the squares are set up to be 1 square equals 1 yard, or actually 1 square equals 1 square, which in my head, I know 1 square equals 1 yard in this game. So if you use the range ruler, which is one of the features, you can see just pretty quickly how many squares from point A to point B is by just dragging it along. And, that's 5 squares, which is 5 yards. This is 13 squares, 13 yards. So that's a really nice handy dandy feature. But let's talk about how I set this up specifically for Shadow the Demon Lord. Now, you can see up here, these are all the various pages that have been set up already. And I have a cover page set up so that this is what I would have the players looking at by default if there's not a map to look at or if there's not any specific art that I've thrown out there for them to look at. So I really don't want them staring at a blank screen or a blank grid. So I just have the this lovely piece of art from the cover of the core rulebook set up on one of my pages so that they have something to look at while we're talking to each other. And then I have another page that's set up with the actual map of the continent of Rule. And this I pulled from the web. Actually, I think I pulled it from the Schwalbe Entertainment website. But you can just Google Lands of Rule or Shadow of the Demon Lord maps, and you'll find it out there on the web. All right, so that is another page. And then I have another page, which is the Northern Reach map. Again, you can find it out there on the internet or on the Schwalbe Entertainment page. And so, one question that's come up on the Google Plus community a few times is, what's the distance on these maps? There's no range listed on the map, so how far is it from one place to another? There are various responses that have been posted on the Google Plus community. I'm not exactly sure how accurate they are, but I went ahead and just kind of set it at what feels right for me. Whether it's right or wrong for the actual game, I don't really care. As long as it works for me, I'm fine with that. So going back to the map of Rule, you can see I have hexes set up here. And if you take the range ruler, I believe I set it up so that it automatically sets each hex to be 100 miles in distance. So from, let's say I'm traveling from the middle of Tyr over to the low country down here, that's about 800 miles. If you're traveling coast to coast, down here in the skinny section, that would be 900 miles. And in the, the fat section down here, that would be, 1,300 miles. So that felt right to me. And so that's what I set it at. Now that is the larger continent map. And this is the Northern Reach area up here. So I had to figure, well, if each hex on this map is 100 miles, then what's it going to be on the Northern Reach map? So again, I kind of had to do some finagling with the measurements just to get it to feel right for me, and so that it kind of makes sense with the map below. So what I did was I made each hex here half of what it is on the bigger map, and it's probably not accurate, but for my purposes, it's close enough. So, if you want to travel from Crossings to Sixton, you're going to be going 250 miles. If you want to travel from the West Hold over to Gateway, then you're going to be traveling about 800 miles. So that is how I have it set. And it's fine for me. I may go in there and fiddle with it at some point if there's a definitive range that is established for these maps. But at this point, that's what I have it set at. Okay, so that is the map of Rural and Northern Reach. Now, the rest of these are specific pages for specific games. There is a game that I ran in a convention, and I may run in another convention, that is one of the published adventures for Shadow of the Demon Lord, and that is the Demon's Wet Nurse. And I have a map set up for the map that came with that particular adventure, which shows the town of Ephraim's Fork. And so I have it here because, like I said, I plan on at some point running it again. So what I have set up here, so that I know that it goes to that adventure, that page goes to that adventure. I have the adventure name kind of as a initial up here, DWN for Demon's Wet Nurse. So anything that I start DWN with, I know is for Demon's Wet Nurse. Now I have a couple more here for an adventure that I'm working on called Crazy Train, and so I start that with CT. And then I have another adventure that I'm working on, Home by the Sea, which is another adventure I'm creating. And so I have HBTS to represent that adventure for those two maps. And as I scroll further down, you can see that I have all the default maps that came with that Roll20 Pro map pack. So you have a random battle in town, you have a random battle in a tavern, random battle in a, what is that, a camp. And if you pull it up, boom, right there, it's got tents, it's got campfire. The scale is a little bit off, but who cares about that? It's just a pre-built map that you can throw up quickly. And, there's various ones here. There's a road, daytime road, nighttime road. There is just like going through a wilderness, going through a swamp. There's one on an iceberg or a glacier. And then there's one in what looks like a lava-filled cave or something like that. So those are the random maps that come with that map pack. And again, I cannot stress enough how convenient that's been for me to be able to just throw out a one of those maps and not have to fiddle with setting it up ahead of time. Highly recommend it. All right, so those are all the maps that I have set up at this point. And so if I choose to, say, run another adventure that was already published, then I could very easily just go in and start a new page and set it up for that specific adventure. So those are my pages that I currently have set up. And so now let's talk about some of the other features that I have set up over here. This is the chat log. There's nothing really to set up there. And this is the asset tab, the art library. And all the art that I purchased, which is a lot for Roll20, I purchased about a bunch because I like using maps and I like using tokens. I'm not really much of a theater of the mind kind of guy. I will use it when it's appropriate, when it's something that doesn't require a whole lot of brain processing power to visualize. But for for more complex scenes, I like to have a map, and I like to have monster tokens, and I like to have character tokens, and I like to be able to see the positioning of where everybody is and what all the terrain features are and all that stuff. That's just my style. It's not right or it's not wrong. It's right for me, but it's not right or wrong. You can do it however you want. You can do a full theater of the mind if you want to, but in that case, I would ask why bother using Roll20 when you can just use Google Hangouts. I guess for I guess you can use it for other features, but anyway. So that's me, Map Tokens Guy. So that is the art library, and then the next thing up here is the journal. I want to spend a little bit of time here. All right, so the journal allows you to set up different folders for different things, such as character sheets. You can have handouts. You can display different types of art. You can save tokens. Lots of stuff can be done with the journal. And this isn't something that is really talked about in any of the tutorials that I've seen, so I do want to spend a little time here because I think this is a very handy tool. So the first thing I have here, as you can see, well, let me just talk about this. You can search anything up here with the search feature, and then you have an add button. And when you hit the add button, you can add a character, you can add a handout, or you can add a folder. And that each one of these gives you a different thing that pops up in this sidebar. So if you hit a folder, basically that just creates a new folder. So the FX here, that's a folder. Adventures, that's a folder. Characters, that's a folder. So if I wanted to create another folder, just hit the folder button, you put a title in there, hit OK, and then it'll pop up over here as another folder. I don't need one right now, so I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to show you the different folders that I have set up here. So I have the first one here is a FX folder. So for the FX folder, I don't have a whole lot in there yet, but what I plan on doing is I will have a bunch of different tokens put into this FX folder so that I can just drag it out onto the battle mat or the dungeon map or whatever as needed, and then I don't have to go to the art library searching for whatever it is that I'm looking for. I don't do that for a whole lot of different tokens, but there are a few that are used more frequently than others, and those I like to have set up. So the first one, and let me get a my blank page up here again. Here we go. All right, the first one I normally have set up, and I don't have it set up yet, is a torch. A couple torches, actually. You have a wall torch, or you have a torch that a character might light up and carry with them. So that only really comes into play if you use the dynamic lighting feature of Roll20, which I do use most often than not. So I like to have torches to allow the characters to light up a torch and to be able to see in dark dungeons, or I like to have torches in rooms that already have lighting set up, or if not a torch, a cauldron or a brazier, something that gives off light, or even just magical orbs that are illuminating a wizard's library or whatnot. So those are the types of things I like to have in the FX folder here. So I'm going to set up I'm going to set one up right now for a torch. So I go back to the art library, I type in torch, and a bunch of stuff comes up. You got the freebies down there in the web, and then you have the ones that I purchased. So I purchased a couple of different packs that have torches in them. So I have a wall torch that would be handy for a dungeon, and then I have a PC torch. Don't like that one because it's not a PNG, it's a JPEG, which means it has this white background around the torch. So I'm going to get rid of that. And you can see right below it, it actually tells you torch JPEG. If I'd have paid attention, then you can see there's a torch PNG. PNGs are the one you want because those don't have backgrounds, and you can just throw those out onto the map, and it looks like it is just another feature of the map. Okay, so now I have two torches. Going back to my library, or my journal, I already have a blank character sheet here, and then I have a 1FX token that I've already set up, and that is the Shadow of the Demon Lord logo. So you can see if I just drag this out here like so, there it is, Shadow of the Demon Lord logo. And I use that for various things, which I will get to here in a little while. But that is, you do this by setting up a character. So when you go into add and you hit character, it'll add a character to whatever folder is open. Or, actually, I lied, it'll add a character to the top, and then you can drag it to whatever folder you want to. So I'm going to drag it down in here into the FX folder, and it comes up with a random name automatically. And that's if you're just coming up with a character on the fly and you don't want to think of a name. It just gives you a name, and you can run with it if you want, or you can change it. I always change it. The names they come up with are kind of dumb. So I'm going to put in here, I'm going to put wall torch. And then over here on the left, you can see that there are a couple of squares. The top square is the avatar, and all that does is it shows you at a glance over here what that art is. So you can see the Shadow of the Demon Lord logo. That's because I have the Shadow of the Demon Lord logo in that avatar box. But if you want the actual token saved on this character sheet, then you need to put it in the default token box here. Now, before you do this, you want to set up your token so that it does what you want it to do. So to set up the token, you click on the token and you hit this gear button, and that brings up this edit token box. So really the only thing I want the wall torch to do is to give light that people can see. And as you can see, I already have the default set so that it emits light at 20 squares and at 30 squares. Now, if I wanted to lower that, I can certainly do that. And I think I do want to do that because I don't think torches in Shadow of the Demon Lord emit light at that range. But that is something I'm probably going to have to look up because it's not on my Shadow of the Demon Lord handy dandy GM screen. It's in the rule book somewhere. So anyway, I'm not going to waste time here on the video looking it up, but I think a wall torch would emit light, a little less light than 20 yards. So I'm going to lower that to 10. And then for the shadowy region beyond the 10, I'm going to set that at 15. That could be totally wrong according to the rules in the book, but right now, just for purposes of this video, that's what I'm going to set it at, and then I'll correct it later. So that's what I wanted to set at. I have the Hess site set up just as a default. That doesn't really matter, but what does matter is that the players need to be able to see this light. So you have to click this All Players See the Light button. And then once you have that set up, you are good to go. You hit Save Changes, and that token is now ready to be saved onto this character sheet. So you hit Select Token, and that will save it right there. And then I also want to make sure that I know what token I'm using. So for the avatar, I'm going to go back to the art library. I'm going to drag that wall torch picture into that avatar box. And so now I can see when I look over here into the FX folder, I'll be able to see that wall torch. All right, so we are good to go here. You don't need to really do anything else with this character sheet. All you're doing is saving that token. So you hit Save Changes, and you are good to go. You don't need to go into the character sheet. You don't need to go into the attributes and abilities. All you do now is you just exit out. So now you have that wall torch saved. Drag it over onto any map, and boom, you can put it on a wall in any dungeon room that you have set up, and it will automatically light it up if you have dynamic lighting set up. All right, I want to do the same thing for this handy dandy regular torch. So as I did before, I pull this out, hit Edit, and then I want to set up the features on the torch. Go over here, let's set this to 10, 15, all players see light, save changes, select token, boom, and then we can put the image there so we can see it in the journal. All right, we are good to go now. I have a regular torch and I have a wall torch that I can drag out as many times as I want to on any page that I set up. All right, so that is my FX folder. Oh, and I forgot to change the name. Duh. So this is just torch. All right, so that, my friends, is what I use the FX folder for. I can also use it for spell templates. So if you have a character that likes to throw fireballs, you can set up a fireball. Of course, you have to find a fireball art. I've purchased an FX template, so all I have to do is type in fireball, and fireballs will come up that I have purchased. Now, if you haven't purchased any and you want to find a freebie fireball, there are some out on the web that are for free, and so you can go out there and use those if you want to. But since I purchased them, I want to make sure I get my money's worth, and I use one of the ones that I purchased. Now, for Fireball, not only do you want to have the token, but you want to have it set so that it actually represents the space that a fireball would actually take up. So that you don't have to fiddle with changing the size of the token. You want to be able to just drag it out onto the map and drop it where you need it, and not have to fiddle with it too much, because that eats up valuable playing time. So the spell Fireball, if I look it up here, it says that the flames spread through a 5-yard radius sphere centered on the target. So 5 by 5. There we go. So let's see. Well, actually, is that right? No. So 5-yard radius would be 5 yards out from the center. So it's actually going to be more like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 1 or 2 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So that would be a 5-yard radius. Diameter would be all the way across. Radius is from the center to the exterior. Right. Basic math, people. Okay, so that is a fireball. Now I could do this ringed fireball, which I purchased, or you can do one without the ring to make it look more organic. If I can find it, here's one. And I can use that one instead. And I like using them both, but the ringed one helps to define the area that the fireball encompasses. So there's not questions as to whether or not this square over here is in the fireball. Well, even though there's flames licking in the fireball, it's not in the fireball. Licking out from the fireball, I should say. It's not actually in the area of the fireball. The area of the fireball are the squares that the fireball ring touches. So that would be an area affected by the fireball, but that would not. Okay, so that is a fireball. So what I would do is go back to my journal, add another character, call it fireball. And since a fireball just kind of explodes and goes away, it does have light, but you really don't need to set up the light feature simply because it doesn't stick around long enough for people to see what's in the area. It basically explodes, lights stuff up for a second, then goes away. So I'm not going to bother setting up any of the lighting features. I really just need to set the size of the token to what I want. And I think I'm good to go at this point. So I will set it as my default token, like so. Then I'll go back to the art library and I will drag the picture of it into the avatar. Actually, that's the unringed one. Let me put the ringed one in there. There we go. And save the changes, and now I have a fireball. So if anybody ever casts a fireball, say I'm going to cast a fireball. Oh, let me put it in my FX folder here. Here we go. I do want to keep them in alphabetical order. All right, so if anybody ever casts a fireball, then I just drag a fireball out and say, okay, put it where you want to put it. Now, one feature that I will need to modify of this token is that if I have a caster that casts fireball frequently, then I want to do the controlled by for that specific player so that they can move the token around once I throw it out there. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do all the moving, and the less I have to do, the better it is for anyone involved in the game. So I will set it so that it's controlled by that specific player, and I'll resave it to the character sheet. But since I don't have any players to save it to right now, then I don't need to do that. All right, so that's how I use the FX folder. Now, let's move on down. What else do I have here? I have adventure. So I have this set up with different folders for the different levels of play, the different tiers of play. And my plan is if I add an adventure, I will add it to whatever folder it would fall under, so that I can find. So if let's say I'm looking for a novice level adventure or a novice tier adventure, I just click under that, and that would have all my novice tier adventures. If I'm looking for an expert tier adventure, I'd do that, and so on. I don't have a whole lot of adventures set, as you can see at this point. I just have the Demon's Wet Nurse and the one I'm working on. So that is not something that I filled out just quite yet. I'm going to have to take out these because I decided to just go with the starting level 0, then the novice 1 to 2, and then the expert. And then I'm going to set up a one for the master level down here. So I'm actually going to get rid of these individual individual ones. Because they're not level specific. They are tier specific. So expert tier encompasses a range of levels from 3 to 6. So when I originally set this up, I was thinking, maybe I'll have an expert level 4 adventure in there. I really don't want to do that. So actually, what I could do is just go in and delete. No, I don't want to delete the folder. Actually, I do. So I'll just go in here, click on that, hit delete folder, hit OK, get rid of that, hit delete. Oops. Right click to hit delete folder, get rid of that, and that's how you get rid of folders. All right, I'm not going to mess with that right now. So I do have a couple of adventures in here. The first one is an official one. That's the one I'm going to show you, and that's the Demon's Wet Nurse. So that I have the folder, then I have a subfolder, and these are all subfolders, incidentally. So I have the master folder here, which is adventures, and I have the subfolder, which is novice, and then I have another subfolder, which is the Demon's the Demon's Wet Nurse. And then I have the different sheets or handouts associated with that particular adventure set up underneath or within that particular folder. So I have this thing, which is the handout, which is not a handout. It's actually my adventure information. So if I were to run this, I would open this up, and this has all of the information from the adventure that I copy and pasted over from the PDF that I purchased. And so it took a little bit of time and a little bit of work to get all this in here, but it's in there now. So I could easily go to an online convention, say like Roll20 Con, and I could say, okay, I'm running Demon's Wet Nurse, and boom, I've got all the information I need to run the Demon's Wet Nurse right here, because this is the entire adventure. And I even have the cover art that I pulled off of the adventure right there. And so that is the first thing I have under this folder. Second thing I have is the art that I may want to show the players. So I set this up as a handout, and what I can do with it at this point is I can show it to the players. So if I click this show to players, they will actually see this. Now, if you recall, I showed you that I have this set up on a page, so I can always have this up on the screen, but if I move to another page, then players won't be able to see this. This way, I can show it to the players, and I can actually save it to their journals, and then they can go back and reference it anytime they want to without having me do it for them. All right, so that is one of the things, and let's see, the other thing I have here is, why do I have two? Yeah, I don't know. I think I meant to have, I think I set one up so that I have the Golden Meadows dairy farm in there. So actually this little guy is going to have to go bye-bye. And then I'll go back in there at some point and put in the map for the dairy farm. So those are the two things that I currently have in that subfolder. Now, if I also wanted to add some more art, say for some of the NPCs, I can definitely create some more handouts and stick them in there. I haven't at this point, but that is something that is probably very likely, because I do want them to put a face to the names. And so, a specific NPC comes up, like the main baddie. I want them to know what she looks like, and not just the token that I have representing her. Okay, so that is what I have under the Demon's Wet Nurse folder, and that is what I use the Adventures folder for. So let me minimize that. And now I have characters. These are where I store the character sheets. And I have some pre-gen characters that I'm working on building here. Brahm Ironstone is one I use from the example video building a character. And so you can see that that character sheet from that adventure is still there. It's loaded right in there. I can pull it out anytime I want to. I can also associate a token with that character sheet. So if I want to pull that character's token out anytime I want to, I can easily do that. All I got to do is find a dwarf token that I want to use for that particular character sheet. And I actually did do this before. I think it was on the last video. But let me just go ahead and do it again here. I have lots of dwarf art that I have purchased. And so I am going to, since he's still a level 0 character, which we will address in a future video, I'm just going to use a basic dwarf token. Oops. Yeah, put it out on the actual sheet here. Like so. And then I can associate that with that character sheet, just like I did with the torches. So you already have the character sheet built, so all you got to do is hit edit, and then you have the character in here. And oh, look, the character's already in there. I already put it in a character sheet as a token, so all I have to do is drag it out there. What I didn't do is I didn't put his avatar in here, so now I'm going to do that. So now I can see exactly who this character sheet belongs to or what token belongs to it, because it's now showing me a tiny little dwarf there. So if I drag and drop him out there, voila, there's Brom. All right, let's get rid of him. So those are the pre-gen characters that I'm working on. Pre-gen characters are always handy for convention games, or if you're running a one-shot game and you don't want to waste time building characters during the session, and you don't want the players to bring their own because you know what kind of crazy thing they're going to bring, then you can have pre-gen characters there. All right, NPCs. These are where I would put any NPCs for specific adventures, and you can see I have the NPC folder, and then I have subfolders for the different adventures that I have set up. And so for the Demon Wet Nurse, I have an NPC for the main baddie, who is Beryl Zarni. I think I have a token for her. That's just the token art. Let me get off this map here and get back to the grid. There we go. I'll probably change that because I don't want. You can see that's just the art from the adventure. I'll probably actually use a proper token for that character. And then you have Baby Gregory, who is another NPC in the adventure. I'm not going to spoil it, but I have 2 tokens for Baby Gregory, and again, I use the art from the adventure for Baby Gregory. Okay. Don't know if I'll keep that or if I'll change it. So that is what I have under the NPCs at this point, and these are also character sheets. So you can see I have the character information, the background for Baby Gregory, the actual stats for Baby Gregory, and same thing for Beryl Zarni. All that's under the NPCs. All right, Bestiary or Bestiary. This is my pride and joy. I have spent a good amount of time working on this, and it's still a work in progress. What I've done is I've started building basically a monster manual or bestiary for Shadow of the Demon Lord, and I'm taking all the monsters from everything and building a character sheet for it. And the way you do that is you add a character, just like we did before for the torches. But since these are monsters, you don't want the full character sheet. That has way too much information for me, the DM. So I need a condensed version. So when you hit this cog over here on the character sheet, you can change it to an NPC sheet, which makes a very much more user-friendly, specific character or NPC character sheet, which I would use then for the NPCs or for the monsters. And there's various settings that you can put on this character sheet. I'm not going to mess with that right now. I just want to show you how you create an NPC sheet. And then I have started working on importing all of the NPCs, and I have them in alphabetical order. I don't have them in order of difficulty. I wish I could have it both ways so that if I wanted to have a difficulty 100, then I could just go into the difficulty 100 folder and find something from there. But I figured I probably know what I'm going to want more so than the difficulty I want it at more often. So I decided just to go alphabetical order. So that's what I started at. I may change it at some point in the future, but I don't know. At this point, we're going to stick with the alphabetical order. And I started with the first monster in the core rulebook, which is Burrowing Centipede. And I went into the core rulebook PDF, which I got with the Kickstarter, and I just copy and pasted the information into the NPC character sheet here. So now, if I want to throw a burrowing centipede out on the board here, I've already put a token associated with it. I just throw that out there, and then I open the character sheet, and I've got the stats. I just have to roll an attack roll, and voila! I made an attack. It's that easy. Rather than having to look it up in the book and then having to fiddle with finding the dice roller and all that stuff, you can do everything just from the character sheet. This is so wonderful to have this pre-built, so that anytime I want any of these monsters, I can just throw it out there. I don't have to worry about looking it up in the book. And then I have a book here, and I have to look at what's on the screen and look on what's on my book or a PDF. And this is just so much easier. So yes, it is taking a lot of time to build this, but once it's built, it's done. I will have it forever. So I think it's well worth the time and investment to get that set up. So that is what I have under the bestiary. And so far, as you can see, I'm only down through part of the D's and then some miscellaneous ones that I've set up there. So let me go ahead and minimize that. And then handouts. This is just generic handouts that would probably be used for anything. I have the Lands of Rule and the Northern Reach maps in there. That's all I have so far. If I wanted to put something else in there, I'm certainly free to do that. And then this last folder is just what comes with the Roll20 generic map pack. So it looks like credits. I can't really get rid of this, so I just minimize it and I don't worry about it. Okay, so that is how I have the folder set up in my journal. Now, this next thing is jukebox. I don't have any music in here, and I really haven't played with this too much. I wish I could put my own music in here. It'd be so nice to have some metal music to be able to load as soon as I throw a map out there. But unfortunately, haven't figured that out if it's even possible. All right, so rollable tables. This is something that I've started working on, and some of the tokens that I've set up, I want to have more than one token associated with that monster. So let's use, for example, demons. I have demons set up in my bestiary, as you can see here. Under demon, but you can see that there are, demons in Shadow of the Demon Lord. They don't all look the same. In fact, they're all different. Whenever a demon appears in the material world, it just creates a random form, and that form can take any appearance. You can use your imagination. It could be a column of fire with two jelly tentacles and a couple of goat legs hanging out underneath it with an octopus head. It's totally your imagination on how your demons look. Unfortunately, demons like that, there's not a whole lot of art for that out there. So what I did was instead of worrying about coming up with crazy random demon miniatures, which I may do at some point, I decided to just find all the demons that have a miniature that I purchased, and I created a token rollable table for them. So what does that mean? What that means is I want to be able to drag a token out here, and let's say it starts off with that token right there. But that's not really what I want this demon to look like. I want this demon to look a little different. So instead of that demon, I can right-click on it, and I can choose a different token that I have associated with this token. And I have associated many demon tokens with this particular token using the rollable table. And you can have a random one, or you can choose which one you want to use. So let's just hit random and see what pops up. Oh, there's a shadow demon, or there's a demon with a it's like a scorpion tail, some goat legs, and it has a mace on a chain, whatever those are called, Morning Star. And then it looks like an elf head with a snake sticking out of its neck. That's a demon. That's a Shadow of the Demon Lord demon right there, is what that is. So I would I'd say, okay, that's what you see. Or if you want a more traditional looking demon, then I've got those built in as well. There you go. So you do that with a rollable table. Now, I'm not going to go into how you do rollable tables. There are tutorials for that, but I'm going to show you my rollable table here. And basically, I have it set up under demons, and then I have all of these different tokens associated with it. So in order to get those tokens connected to a character sheet, then once your rollable table is set up, then you just got to throw a token out there like this, and it just comes up with the first one that's on the rollable table. And then you have to change it to a token. So you go to the you right click on the art image, you hit the advanced feature, or the advanced option of the menu that pops up, and then you click off it's already is drawing. You click that off. So now it's a token. So it'll snap to a grid once it's a token. As just a drawing, it won't snap to a grid. It'll just drop wherever you drop it. But you want it to snap to a grid as a token. So once you do this and you snap it to a grid, then it is something that you can use as a token and save it to a character sheet like I did before. But you kind of have to set it up before you do that. So you want to put the aura on there. And this is something I don't think I mentioned earlier. All of my tokens I set with an aura. This kind of represents the base. If you were using an actual miniature on a tabletop, every miniature on a tabletop has a circular base. And the base in some game iterations of various RPGs, the base has meaning. So the size of the base represents the size of the miniature. So if it's a medium-sized character, it has a certain size base. If it's a large character, it has a certain size base. And so I'm trying to emulate that in Roll20 by setting the aura up to represent the base for the miniature. That does two things for me. Number one, it tells me the size of the miniature, or the size of the monster. And then number two, it helps to highlight the monster when it's on a busy map. So sometimes you got a map that's got all kinds of dungeon features and everything. And if you throw your monster in there, it can kind of get lost in the mix, in the blend. So by putting an aura around my token, that helps to pop the monster out. And I do that with character tokens as well. So there you go. I have the aura set around the monster. That's its token. And just to kind of have it sit in that square, I always put 0.1. You can do smaller than that, I think. Let's see, 0.01, see what happens. Yeah, that makes it actually smaller so it fits in the square. So let's just leave it at 0.01. So there you go. That is what I use the aura for. But anyway, once the token is set up the way you like, then you can save it to your character sheet like I did before. And that's what I did with the various demons. So then now, if I want to pull a demon out, let's say I want a large demon, I just drag and drop the demon, and it is already set to be a large size demon. And if I don't like that image, then I can do a random side and, another one comes up. Or I don't like that one either. I'm going to pull another one up. Or I can just choose one from all the ones that I have listed in here. Let's say I want a vulture-looking demon. And there we go. All right. So that is my rollable tables. And why is that? Like, okay, that's my rollable tables. And I'm using those liberally for various different creatures. Like, I've got tons of orc tokens. I got tons of goblin tokens. I don't want the same goblin token to represent every goblin. So I have a rollable table that has a bunch of goblins so that I can change the goblin image whenever I throw one out on the board. All right, so that's the rollable table tab, and then the last tab here is the settings. I don't do anything special with the settings. I guess the only thing I can mention is that I do have 3D dice enabled because I like to see the dice actually rolled. It makes me feel more like I'm playing a tabletop game rather than a virtual tabletop game. So that's why I have that enabled. If you don't like that, you can turn that off, and it'll just show what you rolled in the chat sidebar. Okay, so that is everything I have set up on the right sidebar. And let me see if there's anything else I want to mention before I put a close to this video. I guess, yes, one last thing. I can show you how I use the turn order. So in Shadow of the Demon Lord, initiative is handled differently than it is from different games. You don't roll for initiative. In Shadow of the Demon Lord, you have a slow turn, or you have a fast turn, then you have a slow turn, then you have the end of round. So there are 3 phases within each round, and you want to be able to keep track of who's going when during your game. Now you can try to do that in your head, or you can have a piece of scratch paper on the side, but I prefer to use the turn order in Roll20 so that I can keep track of who's gone and who hasn't gone. Because there are sometimes when I have 5 players and I have 10 different monsters out on the board, and it's just way too much to keep track of in my head, and it's way too much to keep, I'd have to write down 10 PCs, and I have to write down 10 or 5 PCs and 10 monsters, and I'm wasting all kinds of time doing that. So instead, what I would do is I would have the characters. The character is, let's say, Brahm is out here and he's going to fight. He's going to fight something. And let's say he's going to fight a basilisk. Boom. All right, so Brahm's not going to survive this fight, incidentally. So now I've got both tokens out there, but I need them up on the turn order. So I right-click on them, and I add turn for the basilisk, and I do the same for Brahm Ironstone. I would do that for each monster that is represented in that particular battle. And so now I already have up here, I have the Shadow of the Demon Lord token, which I showed you earlier. And I use that to represent the different phases of the round. So I like to keep track of the rounds. So for one of them, I either, just depending on how much time I want to use, I either use the word round or use R to represent round. So R1 would be round 1. And then I have the end of round already populated up here. So let's say that, actually, let's throw out a few other things. So we have a basilisk, we have a bear, and we have a two-headed snake. So, boom. Okay, so we have those 3 monsters out here, and all of them are going to be fighting poor Brahm. And Brahm he's screwed at this point, but we'll see how we'll see how we set this up. So we are going to figure out who's going fast and who's going slow. So I would say, okay, Brahm, you walked into. Actually, let's do this. Since I'm illustrating this, let's use a quick and dirty random battle map. There we go. All right, so and it's just as easy as that, folks. All right, so Brahm, you are still riding down the road in your caravan when all of a sudden these 3 monsters jump out of the river and out of the woods, and they're going to attack. So you're going on a fast turn or you're going on a slow turn. And Brahm is not an idiot. He says, I'm going fast because I'm getting the holy hell out of here. So what I would do is, okay, I'll go in there and I will put an F to show that Brahm is going fast. And then I would move him to the top of the turn order. Now, what are the monsters going to do? Well, I don't know. The Basilisk, I think he's going to stick around and he's just going to stare at things. So he's going to go fast because he doesn't plan on moving. But the Amphibian Bane, I really don't know how to pronounce that creature, it's going to slither over and try to bite somebody. So it's going to go on slow. So I type an S in there. And then the bear, he's also going to pounce forward and he's going to attack this round as well. So he too is going on slow. So now I have all of this up here and I need to figure out who's going first and so on. So I just put these in order like so. And then I have the end of round up here to remind me to find out if there are any end of round things happening. So there are things that happen in the game at this particular phase in the round. One of the things that happen is if somebody decides to use their action to drink a potion of healing, that healing doesn't take effect until the end of round. So they may drink a potion of healing up here in the fast turn, but they don't get the benefits of that healing until the end of round. There are lots of things that can happen in the end of round. So, I always forget. If I do not put that up there as a reminder, I will forget to find out if anything's happening in the end of round, and then it'll be in the middle of the next round before I remember, and then we have to back up, and it's just not very effective. So this is what I've done for myself to remember to see if there's any end of round things that need to be addressed. All right, so Brahm Ironstone's going first. He is going fast, so he's at the top since he's a character. Characters always go first. And then the Basilisk, who's a monster, monsters always go second. The Basilisk is going after Brahm. So what Brahm does is he turns the wagon around and he runs away. So he lives to fight another day, and then this round is over before it begins. They could give chase, but I guess they decide to fight each other instead. Rawr! And so Brahm is saved by the fact that these stupid monsters. All right. Anyway, that's the example of how I use the turn order. And then when you're done with it, you can clear it, or you can delete the things that you don't need in there anymore, like that. All right, so that is how I use the turn order. The rest of the stuff, I really don't need to show you how I use it because it's just typical Roll20 usage. So I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover on how I use Roll20. Again, this is a fantastic virtual tabletop. I don't know about Fantasy Grounds. It may be just as good. It may be better. I have no idea. There may be other virtual tabletops out there, but I use Roll20. It's what I know. I highly recommend it. It is got lots of bells and whistles. You don't need to use them all. Pick and choose the ones you want to use. But for the ones that are available, they're great. If you want to invest the time to make them even better, you can certainly do so, as I have shown. So with that, I am going to end this video. It's a bit longer than